Hi, everyone. Welcome to Robin and Cindy Unfiltered. I'm Cindy, a certified coach, a therapist, author of More to Give, Stepping into Your New Life at Any Age. And I also give a lot of talks around neuroscience and mindset. And I'm here with Robin.
Hi, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. I'm Robin Spence, and I am a certified coach and a therapist, and I'm the founder of the Boundary Club. And I'm really pleased that you're able to join us again today.
Thanks, Robin. So today we're talking about imposter syndrome. Now, you and I have both seen this come up in our practices and with clients. And one thing I was thinking about is I think there used to be the view that imposter syndrome was really more of a women's issue. But what I'm starting to see, and I think was always the case, but we didn't see, is that a lot of men come with this as well. And I'm starting to see more men talking to me about this. It just comes up naturally. And it just got me thinking about, what is underlying imposter syndrome? What have you noticed when you've worked with people with this?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And my journey has been that it's always been a lot of men
Huh.
who have talked to me about imposter syndrome and the way that it's shown up in their life. And one of the things is like getting that dynamic of understanding what imposter syndrome is, because that word is thrown around a lot these days. I don't know if you would agree with that.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I see it as like this kind of psychological pattern of doubt, uh, doubting their accomplishments, doubting, worrying about being exposed or having this fear that someone's going to tap you on the shoulder, despite all the evidence to the contrary. And so one of the things I'm seeing is that, or finding is that imposter syndrome has this very defined link, I think, to boundaries.
Hmm. Tell us more about that. That's interesting.
Well, I think sometimes failing to set appropriate boundaries can exacerbate imposter syndrome. Like if you're constantly overextending yourself or trying to meet like unrealistic expectations, it reinforces maybe your feelings of inadequacy. So I'm finding this interesting link between the two.
I see that. I love that. And while you were talking, it was making me think about some of the people that I see coming in. It gets into, we talked about this in one of the other recordings that we did, the looping thought pattern of people, despite, like you say, despite the evidence to the contrary, people who are super successful. In fact, I think it's something that comes up in my clients who are really successful, and it's almost as if they're so afraid it's going to be grabbed away from them, and they start doubting themselves, and then they start telling themselves everything that I've done to date was just a fluke. What if I can't do it again? What if somebody else comes in and they run with this, and then where am I going to end up? I had a client that was doing that, was running lots of different projects. They'd been hired to a new company because of all the success they had, and they were saying, but what if I can't do it again? I was like, well, where is that coming from? It's like, let's just have a conversation about this. And we talked about the evidence of, well, look at all these things that you did. So how did you do that? Well, I don't know. Maybe I just guessed. It's like, is that really right? Like you have to have that come to Jesus moment with them of just saying, get out of your head. So there's a lot of insecurity. There's a lot of that saying to themselves. And once they get into that, it tends to, as I've seen it, propagate. It just becomes their constant focus. Have you noticed
Yeah,
that?
it's interesting because you do have to remind people of, their successes and also that, every thought we have is not the truth. We have 65,000 thoughts a day and a lot of them are just crap, And if you imagine that your brain was your house and you had 65,000 pieces of mail coming in every day, you would have to like put some in the bin. You'd have to clean the house occasionally. You'd have to really organize and prioritize. So I think that's what we have to do with our thinking. And a lot of times, that imposter thinking comes from, these thoughts which are not valid, which are not true. So learning how to question our thoughts, I think becomes really important. Like, is that true? And instead of building the evidence that I am an imposter, it's kind of questioning the thought that I'm an imposter.
That is so true. It's something that people can use throughout everything in their life, but particularly when it comes to this, because it can be crippling for people when they have this feeling that I am an imposter. Someone's going to find me out. Like you said earlier, they're going to tap me on the shoulder and say, sorry, you're out of here. So it is questioning that and saying, the mind will go negative all the time, as we know. It's hardwired to do that. It just takes it a bit to the extreme sometimes. So the suggestion is, well, focus on the reasons why you are where you are. You in the position that you're in, because we're talking usually about people working professionally. How did you get that? Think about all the things you've accomplished in your life. What do you like doing? How has that shown up in what you've done? And to really get them to focus more on that and to make a point of doing that really starts to help switch things around so they don't have that immediate connection with, oh, they've asked me to do this, I'm going to fail because I don't know what I'm doing. So it is a bit like cleaning house. You're cleaning house with the thoughts that you don't need anymore, that aren't serving you. And so many people don't know this, that we have more control over our thoughts than a lot of people know. Like, we know this, we've studied this. I wish they'd teach this in school. They need a whole class for people to start to learn. You don't have to listen to what your mind is coming up with all the time.
Yeah, I love that. You're talking my language now. I mean, these sort of skills should be, managing one's mind, managing
Yeah.
one's thoughts and emotions definitely should be taught at school at an early age. And I think, in PhD programs and master's programs, because the thing that we need the most is not taught really. One of the things that I'm finding also, um, that setting boundaries can be a step towards like mitigating imposter syndrome. I think when you clearly define your limits, you create a more manageable, realistic framework for the work that you do or your success. And it reduces the likelihood of feeling overwhelmed or like an imposter. So, it's an interesting uh, kind of collaboration. I'm finding that implementing boundaries, which I thought would help imposter syndrome, works quite well.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm really pleased about that because I'm seeing progress in clients. Setting limits helps you to kind of overwhelm yourself, and you have this sort of ability to manage things realistically. So what are you finding as some of the things that really kind of support people through, their imposter syndrome?
Oh, it's a good question. Thanks. It's recognizing what they're saying to themselves and how that affects them. Because not only will it affect the way that they view things, it can start to affect them physiologically as well. They start to get nervous, it can turn into not sleeping well, and it can spiral into a lot of other things that needn't happen. And so a lot of my work is interrupting that pattern of thinking. Just stop right there. Why are you thinking that? And making them aware of how it's become a habit of thinking that they've created for themselves instead of understanding that they weren't born thinking that. This is something that they've developed. So the good news is they've learned this pattern of thinking, they can unlearn it. So once I have them see that, and we go through all the details, why are you thinking that? What's contrary to that? I'm not saying this happens overnight, but it starts to break the pattern and they start to see that the more that they focus on the other thing, they're switching. It's like they're creating that new neural pattern of thinking in their mind. And that slowly gets them to look at things in a better way.
Yeah, beautiful. I think some of the, just wrapping up some of the final, like some strategies I think are important. and managing both. I think, being able to acknowledge that you're actually feeling that instead of, sort of pretending that, okay, there's this thing happening and I can't manage it. So recognizing that feeling of imposter syndrome, I think is important. And, just like the reality check of just saying, okay, is that true? And I think it's good to seek feedback when you can, when you're thinking in
Mhm.
this loop of thinking that you mentioned, have get some feedback from someone about like, is this what you're noticing about me, or is this true? And learn to say no.
Yeah.
You know, that's my swan song. Learn how to say no to things that overwhelm you. And I think prioritizing self-care and getting, talking to someone like you or me, if you need that support, I think is really important. I love this topic. It's been fabulous really talking about this.
And I love how you summarize these things that people can take away, because it is something that we see so much out there. So listen, this was another episode of Robin and Cindy Unfiltered. Please click like, subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you again.